last but not least, we're going to go to Jane Huxley. Now, Jane's got her wish to go last, and that's great. She's our pure play digital offering from Pandora Internet Radio. Jane is the Managing Director for Australia New Zealand. You've heard some of the history already. Used to work for Fairfax, used to work for Microsoft. I'll let her fill you in. But if you'd please make welcome to the podium with a very warm welcome, Jane Huxley. Thank you.
Thank you. I like to go last because I usually never know what I'm going to say until I actually stand up in front of you all, and today is no exception. Although, you know, listening to Greg and the guys from the AFL, it sort of gives me a sense of where the questions are. Just to begin with, have we got any Pandora listeners here today? A warmer welcome to you than to everybody else. And hopefully by the end of today, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about Pandora. I'm going to talk more about what we see coming down in terms of trends and some of the questions that I think you should be asking yourselves as we move into 2015 and beyond. I started Pandora just over 2 years ago, and it's really heartening. Actually in the living room of my house in November of 2012. I ran the business from home for the first 6 months. We started to grow and to scale the business. We're going to finish the end of this year with about 30 staff across Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, and we'll finish the year at close to 3 million registered users for Pandora. So it's a very, very fast-growing business. We do, of course, stand on the shoulders of the giants of our parent company in Oakland in the US, where Pandora Internet Radio is the largest radio network in America with well north of 250 million registered users. And on any given day in the US, there are more than 80 million Americans consuming their music through Pandora. I think the other thing is that, firstly, I'm really happy I don't have to introduce myself as not the jewellery company, which took a really long time. But the other thing is that there's a very clear path for where we're going and what we do. It's important to realise where we fit in the landscape of music streaming players. There are about 18 companies who are in the music streaming business here in Australia, and we were almost the last ones on the dance floor. When we think about music streaming, there are really 3 categories to think of that broadly describe all of the players. The first one of those is what we call the aggregators of music streaming. The aggregators are like the portals of music, lots of choices in one place, very unclear business model in terms of what they do is they rebroadcast the streams of others. The most popular one of those is TuneIn Radio, which is very popular with expats who are looking to stream music from, you know, the BBC or NPR, or who have very niche tastes. The aggregators also represent what I call podcasts on steroids. So it's really the evolution of podcasts, or being able to find the spoken word broadcasts by using metadata to search for very, very specific topics, like TED Talks, for example. So the aggregators are the first category. There's a few there. TuneIn's one of them. Aha, Stitcher, Omni's a local play in that category. There's a few around there. The second category is what we call the on-demand music players. This is the most crowded category of all. And the music in the on-demand category is exactly that. It is on-demand. Spotify, iTunes, Audio, Deezer, Beats, really JB Hi-Fi Now for a homegrown version of this category. Lots of choices there. And the on-demand players are really good for 2 things. They're really good for music lovers. The people that go to these on-demand categories like Spotify generally identify themselves as a music lover. They're really good if you know exactly what it is that you want to listen to. This song, this catalogue, this artist, this album, this playlist. They do require a little bit of musical knowledge to get the best out of those categories. So they're awesome for those things. I know Spotify is a product that I use a bit if I know what it is that I want to listen to. Now the third category is streaming radio. And this is the category that Pandora fits in. There's a couple of other players and features in this category as well. With streaming radio, what we're aiming to replicate is the ease of radio. There's no easier way to enjoy music than to walk into a room or sit in a car and you push one button and music comes out. It's a very passive way of listening to music. And most people listen to music passively about 80% of the time. So this is the category that we're in, but the way that Pandora does that is with our promise to play only music you love. So the ease of radio, but the promise of being able to listen to just the music that you love. And to understand how it is that we do that, we go back to the year 2000 when the company was first created by our founder, Tim Westergren, himself a musician, who discovered what remains the Music Genome Project, the beating heart of Pandora, that all music could be described using 450 unique attributes. And those attributes describe the instrumentation, the tone, the timbre, the song, the voice, everything that makes up a piece of music, regardless of what that is, whether it's ballet or classical, hip-hop, rock, Viking death metal, one of my least favourite categories on Pandora. It can all be described using these 450 unique attributes. So when we get a piece of music at Pandora, the first thing that happens to that music is that it's listened to by a human being, a trained musician, who listens to the track or auditions the track. And they tag the 450 pieces of unique data onto every single song that we hear. So that song then has its own unique fingerprint, and it's ingested into the Music Genome Project. So along comes a Pandora listener. Pandora listeners is about 86% of them who are listening on a mobile device right now. Every Pandora listener is a logged in user. When you come to Pandora, you register and you log in, and that login follows you from every device, wherever you wanted to listen to the music that you love. After you've done that, you give us the name of one song that you love, one artist or one genre, but a tip for Pandora listeners, the best place to start is from a song itself. So you give us the name of that song, and we look straight to the unique fingerprint of the song that you've asked for. And at that point, we cue 70. We play the song that you asked for, and then we play the next most adjacent fingerprint, and the next most, and the next most, and the next most, and so on. As you're listening to Pandora, you thumb up and you thumb down. And every time you do that, if you hear a song that you love, you thumb it up, we reshuffle that cue, we start to play more of the music that you love. If you thumb it down, that song disappears, we reshuffle the cue, and we start to refine your radio station right down to playing just the music that you love. And you can have 100 radio stations on every single account. As you're listening to Pandora, about every 8 or 9 songs or so, we're going to start to play you music that you've never heard before. Over 70% of the music in the genome is from an independent musician. They won't be spun on radio, they're not signed to major labels, and we serve them to you in Pandora based on those attributes, the DNA itself. Why that's important to us is that when people discover something for the first time, particularly on a mobile device, they almost feel compelled to share it with another human being. So when we discover things, a little light goes on in all of us. I found this great restaurant, I'm staying in this great hotel, I'm going here, I'm going there. We feel compelled to share it. And so a person that downloads and starts 2 stations in the first 7 days of listening to Pandora, on average, recruits 8 more Pandora listeners for us. It's like the great Amway of radio apps, where our listeners who are listening to their stations recommend it to friends. The secret source of the growth of Pandora, we're now adding 30,000 registered users a week. I have very little marketing budget, which is why I speak at everything. But the secret is personalization and discovery. That single logged in user can then listen to Pandora anywhere. And at the end of last month, we're now shipping Pandora in Australia on over 250 consumer electronic devices that are shipping into the home. The battle of the living room is looming large, particularly in the entertainment category for everybody. Smart TVs, set-top boxes, gaming PlayStations, Chromecast, Apple TV, Pebble watches, 250 devices shipping with a version of Pandora in the box right now. The second place that passive music listening is really critical is in the car. Most people are listening to traditional radio in the car on their way to and from work. By the end of the first quarter of next year, Pandora will be shipping in over 60% of all new cars in Australia and New Zealand. And it streams through your phone or your tablet. You get into your car. I felt as the MD I had to go buy a car that played Pandora, so I went earlier this year and I bought a Mazda. We've got Holden, Mazda, Ford, Nissan, Hyundai, BMW. We're about to announce the next one over the next couple of months, giving us that market share that I spoke to earlier. So I bought this Mazda 3. You get into your car, it Bluetooths automatically to your phone. It unlocks automatically. The seat's exactly where I need it. And I'm driving along and music I love starts to play. And you control Pandora using voice commands, thumb up, thumb down, skip, new station, add station, however you normally use Pandora. You just do that using voice controls in the car. And so that's really the story of Pandora. But the reason that I wanted to tell that story is because it speaks to a number of the really critical trends that are going on in the space right now. We've all talked about the significance of mobile. In terms of mobile usage, as I said, over 86% of our audience are logging in through a smartphone or a tablet. The average Pandora listener is listening to Pandora on their mobile device for 2.5 hours a day. Mobile is powering massive engagement with brands because it basically follows you wherever you are. That same mobile logged in user then gives us access to all of the data that user is amassing. We're running data, anything from the genome itself through to the logged in user and everything they've said or done since they came to Pandora, with demographical targeting, behavioral targeting, and now through the use of third-party data, predictive targeting. When I look to the trends around mobile, one of the places that I always look to is Meeker, who is one of the great oracles of predicting where this is all going. And I encourage you to Google Meeker if you aren't looking at some of the stuff that she's predicting around this space. She is US-based. We're about 2 years behind some of the predictions that she's making. She made some very interesting predictions this year in the field of finance and health, but also trends around mobile and mobile app usage. When people are using their mobile phones now, about 85% of all of the use is inside an app on the phone. Mobile web browsing is now only about 15% of the total time that we're spending on mobile. On average, there will be between 6 and 8 apps that are used on every phone for about 90% of the time. Those 6 to 8 apps will all be owned by various publishers. Apps are a little bit like a black box of data collection. The data inside of the app is owned by the publisher or the content owner themselves. So in our case, the data is all owned by Pandora, and we use that data to build our business model on the top of. So think about apps on phones, where people are going to be, the black box nature of finding your consumer as they disappear into that world of just 6 to 8 key apps on every single phone. There'll be massive duking out for the space, who can elbow each other off the home screen. There are some really clear categories emerging. We've heard from the news category, the sport category, the music category, banking and health. Browsing will always constitute one of the home screen apps, and then there'll be 1 or 2 others depending on what the person is that are doing with their phone. So in this world of black box apps, how do you find your consumers as they literally disappear into these mobile devices? I think that's one of the great challenges that we need to face. Logged in users and data collection strategies, I think, is the next critical trend. As I mentioned, we're using the data in our company for the user themselves, for the music itself, and we've just announced our next set of features that we'll be rolling out over the next year for the music makers themselves. We've just announced the artist marketing platform, which we intend to build on over the next 12 months, where we have released or opened up the data in the music genome to any musician, any artist that's spinning on Pandora right now. I'll tell you a little story about what that means. A couple of years ago, as I just started out Pandora, I was down here in Melbourne, in fact, and I was walking through the city between meetings, and I walked through Bourke Street Mall. I was walking through, there was a busker playing there, or some buskers playing there, and they always have really awesome buskers outside of David Jones. It must be really prime real estate for busking there. And I was walking through this music, I was thinking, oh God, this is good music. I kind of like this music. It sounds really good. There's a crowd forming around these 3 young guys who were playing acoustic instruments and singing outside of David Jones. So I joined the back of the crowd, foot tapping. Yeah, this is good music. There's a great vibe here. People are really enjoying it. It's original music. They're not doing covers. I thought, I'm just gonna stick around here and have a talk to these boys during the next break. So clutching my business card, I had a real cougar moment where I was stalking at the edge of the circle waiting for a break. And towards the end of the sets, you know, the crowd started to disperse, and I went up and, oh, hi, you know, my name's Jane, I work for Pandora, not the jewellery company. And I'm just wondering if you are interested in having your music spinning in Pandora. And like all young bands, oh yeah, that'd be awesome, that'd be awesome. They'd probably never heard of us, but they just really wanted me to go away. They pressed a CD into my hands, and I took that CD and I sent it over to the music analysts to be auditioned to go into the genome. As I said, there's a quality bar that we have for all music spinning in the genome. They auditioned this CD and they put it into the genome, and it started spinning. 3 young boys, band called Woodlock, from down here in Melbourne, now have an audience in excess of 100,000 people that are spinning their music, most of them based across the US. So when a band comes along now to Pandora and they're spinning to this audience of 81 million people, really magical things can happen. They go into the artist marketing platform, they can see which tracks are spinning off which albums, who's thumbing tracks up and who's thumbing them down, what the attributes of their music are like, who the audience thinks they're like. They can tell the age, the demographics, the gender. Where is my audience? Who are they? How old are they? What gender are they? And where are they? And we display that data on heat maps, showing exactly where the fans are. So when musicians are looking to tour, they're increasingly turning to the data in the platforms to understand who their audience is, who they should tour with, where they should go, when they should go, and what they should play. And that data within these platforms is only going to get bigger and bigger. We're providing for some of our musicians audio bumpers. So if Boy and Band, for example, Boy and Bear were doing a tour down here in Melbourne, we might get the lead singer to bump on to any Boy and Bear track or station or music that sounds like that. Hey, it's John from Boy and Bear, we're touring in Melbourne, we're going to be at this venue. We can do a direct connection to the fan to enable all of the future business models around ticketing, around merchandise, and around additional digital downloads. And we think that that's what the roadmap for Pandora looks like over the next 2 or 3 years for the artists themselves. Our founder calls us a 100-year company. We're just about to turn 15. So we think off the back of being right in the middle of these trends around mobile apps, around data, is a really, really sweet spot to be. The questions I think that you should be asking yourselves is, as Greg said, how do you service your customers on mobile? Make no mistake, your customers will all have disappeared into mobile fully within the next 2 to 3 years. Desktop usage will be minimal and nominal. It will be tablet-based desktop usage. Phenomenal machines coming onto the market right now, like the Surface from Microsoft, which is a hybrid tablet laptop, but classified as a mobile device in terms of IP targeting. We will see customers disappear fully into the world of mobile. What is your strategy for servicing your customers in that environment? As customers do disappear into these worlds of apps, what is your strategy for reaching your customer with marketing messages, for new customer usage or incremental product usage? What's your strategy for getting into those black boxes? What's your story for the car and the living room? You know, as we move into this mobile app-led world, your consumer becomes available to you for a hell of a lot longer than a commute or being desktop bound. They're everywhere. What's your strategy to get into the living room? What's your strategy to get into the car or into the commute time? It's a little bit like the follow the sun strategy at Fairfax, but it's becoming very, very mobile first led. And then as you move down that path and you start to represent yourself in a world of mobile, which is closer to the consumer than ever before, literally inches from their face, the one thing that will set brands apart is their strategy around authenticity. And I think the AFL did a really good job of talking about that authenticity there. What is your strategy for authenticity for your brand? Because if you are 2 inches from somebody's face and you are not authentic 100% of the time, then you're in big trouble as we go further and further down this path. So that's a little bit about Pandora. It's a little bit about what I think's going on in the market and what we're doing to respond to some of those trends over the next couple of years.
Jane, thank you. We're going to go to some questions now. We will have you away on time. 12 o'clock was the finish time, so we're in plenty of good time. We'll go to some questions now and we'll close out before noon. So, Jane, thanks again. I'm going to ask the same question that I asked Greg because I think it's a helpful question. As you think about 2015 and your business, what keeps you up at night? What's the one thing that worries you about next year and what are you going to do about it?
My kids keep me up at night. Satan and Lucifer. You know, there's this. I mean, we live in constant change, right? There is never a day that I go into the office where I'm doing the same thing. And most of the time, you know, running this startup, albeit in the big warm hug of a big listed company, this is the first subsidiary for Pandora outside of the US. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. Being able to live and deal with ambiguity is a critical skill set, particularly in a digital pure play, because the audiences are moving faster than ever before. You've got to keep your eye on the prize, which is the listener, in our case, or the consumer itself. Never take your eyes off what the customer is doing, and we get very distracted by all the other pieces of our business model. When I get up every day, the first thing I do is I spend 30 minutes responding to the listener support aliases. You know, we use Desk to do that. It's critical for me to understand exactly what it is that the listeners are saying and doing and thinking and needing from Pandora. And one of the reasons I do that is because I'm going to say 9 out of 10 of the emails that I get are thank yous. I ran Fairfax Digital for just over 5 years, never got a thank you. Except from Greg. Certainly when he
left, I said thank you.
You did, and nicely. So it's a nice place to be, but making sure that you can deal with ambiguity, never lose focus on the customer themselves, build an awesome team, and again, I'm in the fortunate position of being able to hire every single person that works for Pandora and have a solid financial plan. I have a 5-year financial view, and I can tell you exactly on any given day what the financial metrics for the business are. So I'm not saying I don't sleep at night, but I'm saying that living in a world of constant change and dealing with ambiguity, there's not that much to worry about if you're kind of always on your toes. And that's where we've got to be every day at Pandora.
Yep, great. Before I go to the floor, Greg, do you have any questions? I'll go straight to the floor. Maybe we can come back to you if you want to ask me anything.
No, I'm just interested in the competitive set. So you've got the categories. You talk Spotify, you talk Pandora, you know, audio. You said that there'll be 6 to 8 apps, right? I mean, how many of those are music apps? Is it one music app? You know, is there one video streaming app, or is there one news app, or is there one single app that has your news, music, and entertainment? I mean, it's where the competitive set is, and if you start from music, I'd be interested in your view of. You obviously think you will win. Why would you win?
So it's a good question, and the answer is that it's all user defined, right? So for example, in the world of a music lover, who is not necessarily the core demographic for Pandora, we know that music lovers will have between 2 and 4 choices for music streaming on their phone. If they choose Pandora in that environment, I get about 8% of their total time in that app, and 8% of a music lover in an ad-funded model is not enough time in the day for me to make enough money out of for the economics of my model. If you are a movie lover, a film and TV lover, the same thing will happen. You'll have 2 or 3 choices in the genre that you feel passionate about. The same with sport. The same with any of these lifestyle choices that you're looking for. So, you know, the 6 to 8 apps in the case of a very, very passionate sport lover might be 4 for sport and 4 for everything else. Now with us, in terms of our competitive set, we are here to redefine radio. You know, we are here to change the face of traditional radio listening. People who've always listened to music on the radio, they're the people that we define as the target audience for Pandora. They do not identify as music lovers. They identify as very, very busy people who are pushing prams and riding in trams, and they're working in open plan offices. They're sports fans. They're generally at the office during the day. These are the people that we're targeting with Pandora that gives us the broadest possible case for listening to music that they love, doing something else at the same time. We are also, as I said, very moving swiftly towards a position of dominance in new car manufacturing and existing, in fact, with 100% coverage of aftermarket stereo providers, again hitting at the heartland of where our audience is. The thing again with these digital pure plays and with the apps in this space is come back to the same thing. Be very, very focused on who your customer is and where they are and what they're doing while they're using your particular product. So we think that we are differentiated enough through the IP of our company, the Music Genome Project, the way that we select the music that you love. We think that we're differentiated enough in the beating heart of the company, plus the data strategy and our approach to the broadest possible audience, to be one of the apps that remains standing in each category. So at the end of the day, it's going to be user-defined, and I think that, again, for people who are looking in the app strategy, there are companies out there right now that will ping the apps that are on the phone that you are resident on, and that should be guiding a lot of the partnership and business development strategies that you're looking at yourselves as companies. And that data will come more and more to the fore, particularly now we've turned on mobile app measurement through the IAB here in Australia. That sort of data will start to get surfaced more and more in Australia, and that's what I would be looking at for business development and partnerships.
We've got time for one or two questions from the floor before we conclude. I'm going to go to Julian Dunn from Australian Football League. Julian, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jane, you talked a lot about your product and distribution strategies and how they drive consumption, which is absolutely fascinating, so thank you. I'm just interested about the promotional strategies that you might have used. You said you had a pretty small marketing budget. What's been effective, and how have you built a communications strategy?
So what's most effective for us is word of mouth, and that organic growth that we get from one Pandora listener who recruits more Pandora listeners for us. And it comes back to, again, that focus on the listener and making sure that you're responding to them, and you're continuing to focus on having the best product that's possible in that environment. So word of mouth by far. We do a little bit of SEM, which allows us to pick up some of the keyword markets around genre. You know, holiday music, Christmas music goes off at this time of year. It's a massive listening time for us. So we do SEM around sort of occasions in the market, and that brings us a few listeners. We do a lot of PR. I do a lot of talking and stuff. I'll get up and talk at the back of an envelope. Thanks for having me. You know, just really out and getting the word out about who we are and what we do. We are not a big shouty company. We are not a billboard back of the bus advertising-led company. We know that with our product and its connection to passion, that it's that last centimetre that makes a difference between seeing or hearing or having the product recommended to you and starting your first station. And if I can cross that tiny little 1 centimetre gap, then that tips off the Amway business model for me, where members get members. So most of the efforts we close around that last little centimetre. Coming into next year, I've hired a marketing director, and we will start, and we've got a bigger marketing budget, we'll start to broaden out into audiences, and the audiences that I'm interested in are parents, fitness, food and wine, commuters, sports lovers, things that you do while you're listening to music. That is the heartland of Pandora. So we will start to branch out into experiential events and partnerships, where McDonald's are partner of music over summer. If you go into McDonald's right now and you buy $1 frozen Coke, you can go up to the cash register and they'll give you a little cardboard box that you can put your phone in. It turns your cup into a speaker. We've got 4 branded stations for Pandora. and McDonald's bring everybody who buys that frozen Coke a week of free listening, ad-free listening on Pandora. So more of that partnership for us is going to be really critical, as is the partnerships with the auto manufacturers. That's where we're going.